Oval.
It's not working.
The only she gets to see us.
Yeah.
All right, we'll call the December 4th meeting of the City Council order. Please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Byerly.
Here.
Councilmember Conklin.
Here.
Councilmember Missouri. Here. Councilmember Stevenson. Councilmember Brinker.
Here.
Councilmember Morris.
Here.
Mayor Long.
Here. Approval of the minutes of the November 27th special meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion floor, second. Any questions, comments?
I think if memory serves, but both Councillor Conklin and I were here in person on the 27th.
Oh, see, I didn't even know I wasn't absent.
Oh, you were indelibly printed on my memory.
Oh, okay.
So, you amend the motion to include that correction?
Sure.
In a second.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Public comments. Comments from residents and city taxpayers. There are some things on the agenda. Go ahead.
I'm Bill Bailey. I'm here from the Fire Advisory Board, Citizens Host Company. The advisory board did go over the ordinance and passed it, not unanimously. The citizens members were still against the ordinance for several reasons. And we outlined some of those reasons in the letter at the last council meeting and also the letter we sent in July. And basically, we're not trying to hold up the merger. We're not against the merger. We support the Hopes and Handies combining as one. And like I say, we don't want to hold that up, but we do have concerns about some of the items in the ordinance. Mainly the rotation of the chief not being rotated anymore, that the chief's going to be appointed by the city manager rather than being elected. Currently, the chiefs are elected by the fire company members and approved by council and the manager. So there's, for the last 40 years, at least it's been that way. It's been rotated, and we've not been given any explanation as to why it's being changed at this point. It doesn't really have anything to do with the merger. The merger can still occur, and there would be a chief of Citizens and a chief of East Side. So that was our major concern. We also had a couple other concerns that the foreman position was removed from the ordinance. We currently have a foreman in our bylaws, and we would like that to stay. The foreman position has been eliminated and replaced by a district chief under the proposed ordinance.
What are you looking at on our paper here? What amendment would that be, like 59-4 or
59-1, and in the discussion with the Fire Advisory Board, foreman was removed, but the Fire Advisory Board agreed in the majority that the inclusion of the language, which has always been in the ordinance, of such other officers as each company may deem necessary, means that they can elect a foreman, if they so choose, a lieutenant, a captain, a sergeant, any of the officers they so choose.
Okay, in section 59.2, the current makeup of the advisory board is 2 members from each of the 3 companies and the city chief. Under the proposal, it'll be 2 members from each of the 2 companies and the city chief, which is going to give whichever company the city chief belongs to is going to have a 3-2 advantage on the advisory board. Right now, the company that the chief belongs to has 3 members, but it's 3 out of 7, so they don't really have a advantage, or a majority, I should say. We had discussed it possibly leaving the board at 7 members with the 5 that are proposed, and then adding 2 council members possibly. That's a Citizens Hose Company recommendation, not an advisory board recommendation. And also concerning the advisory board, since the advisory board is a liaison between the fire department and the city, we felt that city employees, such as the paid drivers, other than the fire chief, should not be part of the advisory board. The terms of all our officers in our bylaws are 2 years. The proposed term for the district chief is 6 years, which again, the advisory board recommended to keep it at 6 years. The reason the chiefs were 6 years before was they were 2 years as assistant chief, 2 years as deputy, and then 2 years as chief. We feel to be consistent with all the other officers that the term should be 2 years. And then the advisory board has been removed in the present for the proposed ordinance. The advisory board has been removed from the recommendation process for the district chiefs. We weren't sure why that happened. In the ordinance, the duties of the advisory board are a problem-solving, dispute-settling panel concerned with fire department matters. Within section 59-9 of the proposed ordinance, it removes the advisory board from the suspension process and gives the chief the power to suspend somebody on his own without bringing it to the advisory board.
59-9 is not changed. That's the same as it's been in place since 1972.
What's that?
59-9 has nothing altered. Nothing has been removed from that section. It's the same as it was in 1972 and still is in existence today. The Fire Advisory Board does not have under the ordinance the power to
Section may have been
suspend.
changed then in one of the revisions. There's a section in there concerning the advisory board and suspensions where under the present system, the suspensions are brought before the advisory board.
I think you're looking at 59-10B that looks like it's crossed out here. So
The ordinance has been revised several times, so some of the numbers may be off.
if it's about the fire chief has the power to recommend suspension of any members of the company and the fire department dereliction of duty, disobeying his orders, misconduct, he shall submit a report to his actions taken and the causes the same to the fire department advisory board. Fire department advisory board shall review the charges and action taken, shall report their findings and recommendations to the city manager for disposition. That section sounds like what you're talking about has it crossed out as those being
Right.
removed.
That's the section, yeah.
They don't have the ability to suspend anyone, though. They have an ability to receive a report that the chief suspended or disciplined someone, and then they can write a report and send that report to me, but that's just a kind of formality that's taken, because there still is, as a department head, the actions of any department head are reviewed by the city manager when it comes to discipline.
So we would recommend. So instead of recommended, they just now have the power. Am I correct with that? Fire chief now has the power, whereas prior is fire chief can recommend. Am I correct with that?
No. The fire chief has the ability to recommend, oh yeah, you're right.
It used to say recommend, now he just says, now it says they have the power to suspend any member.
Or members,
Yeah. So that gives them the authority of that. That's a big jump.
Well, not complete authority, because the suspension is still done by the city manager if it is an employee.
Is there an appeal process? If somebody gets suspended, do they have a right, or can they appeal their side of the story? So that somebody can hear both sides.
Well, that is required by law with Loudermill, because they have a interest in their position.
The other issue, I emailed Mr. Wilson this morning, last I checked, I had not heard back, but 59-9E, it says something to the effect that the fire chief is in charge of all fire apparatus. The Citizens Hose Company owns several pieces of apparatus privately. We pay for maintenance, we pay insurance, fuel, everything, and we believe that the fire chief should not have control of privately owned apparatus. And
10E, by the way.
the last thing, with the fire chief being appointed by the district manager, there's a question. I was referred to another policy, personnel policy, as to how a person would apply to become fire chief, which isn't addressed in the proposed ordinance, but it's addressed in another personnel policy apparently. But that was a concern, that if we get a member that's 18 years old and aspires to be fire chief in 10 or 15 years, how do they go about it? There's nothing in the ordinance that directs them or guides them as to how they should aspire to do that.
That's consistent with every city ordinance when it comes to department heads.
Pardon?
That's consistent with every city ordinance when it comes to department heads. In the ordinance where it discusses chief of police, it's one sentence. So it doesn't tell you how to apply to be chief of police. There are policies in place and other ordinances that guide those things. That's why you were directed to the other section of the city code.
We just thought there should be something in the fire department ordinance that indicates how a person could become chief that wants to be. And that's Citizens Hose Company's concern. Whether that's a valid concern or not, that's up to the council. So again, we just have these concerns about the ordinance. We're not concerned with the merger. We don't want to hold up the merger. We're looking forward to operating with 2 companies rather than 3, but we just want it to be fair, and we want to have an equal say as with the other companies. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be addressing that under 5A, so a little more time. Why don't we move on? If you have something about that, we'll,
Yes.
when it's on the agenda, okay? Somebody else had their hand up. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
My name is Joan Moles, and I live on South Jones Street. I'm kind of at my wit's end. I've contacted and discussed the issue of at least 10 to probably 12 stray cats in my neighborhood. I discussed it with the SPCA, who has completely washed their hands of it. They don't want anything to do with it. It's the responsibility, apparently, of the homeowners to go out and trap the cats, make arrangements to take them to a vet, have them spayed, and then they bring them back. Then we're required to bring them back into our neighborhood and feed and care for them. And they're talking about it's like one cat. If it's one cat, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But when you get up in the morning and you open up your front door to pick up your newspaper, and 2 cats jump off your front porch, and they run across the street. And now there's a vacant, and I'll call it an uninhabitable home across the street from me. And that's where most of these cats are accumulating and apparently living. They're always around the house. They're using all the mulch around my house for litter boxes. They have destroyed the furniture pads on my deacon bench and on my other furniture on the front porch. And I was able to, I actually called the non-emergency line here and to find out who your animal control person was. And I was informed that there is no animal control person for the city of Lock Haven. But one of the officers did get back to me, and I'm sorry I don't know which one it was or who it was, but he gave me a rather sarcastic response to the issue. And I guess, if you don't live with it, it doesn't bother you. But when you've got all these cats around your house, it's pretty upsetting. He told me that if it was him, that he would just turn the hose on them. And I said, well, you're right, I don't like your response because I don't believe in harming an animal because of some human disregard for that animal. I have a small dog. He is licensed, he is vaccinated, he has all of his immunizations, and he also has a pretty serious health condition that costs me roughly $200 a month just for medication. My backyard is completely fenced in, but these animals, these cats are still running around. They're in my backyard. They're, excuse my French, but they're pooping right on top of the ground when I'm trying to cut grass. I'm really concerned that these are stray cats and they're feral, so they probably have no rabies vaccinations or anything else. And I feel very hesitant to even put the dog out on his own. I still stand there and, watch over him to make sure that he's not getting around cats. This morning, when I took him out, there was a big mess on the sidewalk in the backyard, where apparently somebody who does not have animals doesn't know that you can't just give an animal or change its diet. So the cat had thrown up all over the back walk. And I don't have anywhere else to go. So I'm asking you, as city council, what can you do? If my dog was, and my dog is also microchipped, if my dog was out running on the street and somebody called, an officer would come and pick him up and probably take him to the SPCA. But nobody does anything about all these stray cats. And they're all feral. I did catch one of them. He was the less feral of all, and he was a younger cat. I didn't have to catch him. He was curled up on my porch, and I was able to put him in a pet taxi. I took him to the SPCA. The young girl who was trying to assist me had to get direction from her supervisor, and they told her she was to scan the cat. I said, the cat doesn't have a chip. It's a stray cat. It's been in the neighborhood for several months. Then she said, well, they also suggested that they take its picture, I don't know if it's he or she, take its picture and put it out on Facebook. I said, well, not with my information, it's not my cat. We argued for a while, and finally she said, well, my supervisor or my boss or whatever has indicated that you'll need to take the animal back and release it. And I said, release it where? And she said, wherever you found it. I said, I didn't find it, it found me, it was on my porch. And she said, we'll have to release it. I said, grab your coat, honey, because it was a rainy day. And she said, what do I need my coat for? I said, because if I release it, I'm releasing it in your parking lot, and you're gonna have to go chase it and find it again. So I don't know where to go with the issue. And I know that if you don't live with it every day, you're probably thinking, oh, what a pain in the butt she is for complaining about it. But it's a nightmare. It's pathetic when you look out and see all these cats where they have no shelter, no food, nowhere to go except this uninhabitable, abandoned, whatever it is, house across the street. So I don't know who is feeding it, who's feeding them. I don't know where they're getting their food from. I just don't know what the solution is. I don't know if the city can have a conversation with the SPCA. Since they're a no-kill facility, they won't take anything over there. When their cat colonies are killed, they won't take another cat.
Didn't they have a program for a while where they were doing the feral cat thing where they trap and span and then they release them?
There's a
But
lot
they're
of
still
people,
doing that.
there's a lot of people in your neighborhood. I live in your neighborhood.
It's
And there's a
South
lot
Johnson,
of,
South Fair.
and there's a lot of people that are actively attempting to help make the situation better, but you're right, it's a tough situation, and it's gonna be the season where unfortunately you see a lot of cats pass away because of the cold weather. But there are a lot of folks in your neighborhood who are actively working on catching, spaying, unfortunately releasing. I mean, to stop the population of cats, you have to
Well, that's
have them
that's
spayed or
correct, but in the
neutered.
meantime, when you bring them back home, they still are hungry, they still need to be fed. And I have a dog, I know how much it costs me to feed my dog, it's only a little 20-pound dog. I don't know how far they would think that 10-pound bag of cat chow would go with 15 cats.
I don't know what all the parameters are about it, but I know that there are a lot of folks in your neighborhood who are attempting to make that a better situation. I don't know what the solution is, unfortunately. I wish it was something that we could easily tell you it's this simple, but it's unfortunately not.
And the laws around cats are different than the dogs. I mean, you mentioned the dogs. Years ago, we had an incident where one of the council members wanted to make a leash law for cats because they were all over. And we did some research and found out we weren't allowed to actually for cats, but you could for dogs. So I don't know.
City Council does make an annual donation to the Clinton County SPCA. In part, that's for general support and to have the SPCA act as the city's animal control. And that amount was raised around 2016 or 17 in order to help support the catch, fix, and release program.
Will they be coming in front of us
Next week.
Perhaps we can bring the topic up.
Yep, so I'll email the SPCA this week to maybe have some information on that program available for you and how that's working.
Do we know when they're coming? We can let her know.
Next week.
This next week?
Yeah.
So if you want to come next week, they're going to be here. We're going to be talking to them about our contribution to them, and we can talk to them about this issue.
I can do that, I mean, I've spoken to them myself, and they have the attitude is, or the reaction seems to be that they think it's just one cat, and it's not one cat. It's a whole colony of cats.
Sure. But it might make a difference if you're talking to them in front of us.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
So you're welcome to come. They're going to be here and asking us for a contribution. So it's a good time to talk to them about things that they do and how they might be able to help.
Well, and I don't believe in euthanization, but, when you look at the newspaper and they have their animals that are up for adoption, the average age of the cats that they have up for adoption are between 5 and 10 years old. And most people, if they want a cat, they want a kitten. And so these cats are housed in little tiny cages. And to me, that's more cruel than anything I could possibly think of, but.
Well, we will talk to them about it. Like I said, you're welcome to come and join the conversation next week when we meet with them.
I'm gonna try to do that, because the officer also told me that there was a nighttime depository over there, that if I was able to catch a cat or trap a cat, that I could take it over even after hours. And when I mentioned that to the young lady who was assisting me, she said, oh, that's only for you all as police officers. That you don't, it's not just that there's a cage there that you can just, any Tom, Dick, or Harry can go over and open the door and put the animal in. That apparently it's a locked situation where if a police officer finds an animal that's harmed or hurt or something, that they can take and put there, for the people to find in the morning. But it's not for the general public to go in and to take animals in and just like for nighttime deposit when they're not open. Because when you take the animal and they are open, they won't accept it anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's what we can do for you, is to have the discussion next week.
All right, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming and bringing our attention to it. Do we have any other comments from residents and taxpayers? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barb Elling, and I live on South Fairview Street, and I know what she's talking about, the cats. And when I get upset is when you have flowers out, you see from the back window, guess what? Cats are using as a bathroom. You know how that is, and I don't like that. But they are roaming the neighborhood. That isn't really what I wanted to ask. When Beagle said about the fire chief, that it would be appointed by the city manager, well, who used to appoint them? Why? I don't understand. And does that include Citizens Host Company fire chief also? Did I misunderstand something, or?
Did you know the most about the process before?
The before and after was that the fire company themselves elected your chief, and then they were endorsed by the city, and they would spend 2 years as an assistant, and then there would be a deputy chief and a fire chief. Then after 2 years, the fire chief would move out, sometimes back down to assistant, would move to deputy would move to fire chief. So you had a continuous flow of education and training and experience moving up through the line officers' positions. And now we'll have, in this ordinance, we'll have one chief, and that's what it'll just stay there. The other ones will be district chiefs. One chief for both, and each chief would have a district chief, they were calling it, but it would be like a deputy or an assistant, but there would be no rotation.
Okay. Well, when I heard that the city manager would be appointing the fire chief, and I thought, wait, I would think the firemen would know who they could appoint, who they could elect, or however they could process for the individuals.
Usually it went through the company, the advisory board, then they come to the manager, and then ultimately come to council, and we would approve it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I have a written statement. I'll read it to you. I'll give you copies. Again, my name is Ron Drummel, president of the Piper Aviation Museum. I'm also, along with my airplane partner, we run a hangar here at Lock Haven. So again, I'm questioning the city manager's ill-conceived plan to not purchase fuel in the coming year at our airport. Is this a result of poor management or a deliberate attempt to destroy our airport? It makes absolutely no financial sense to end a service that generates income for the airport. The mismanagement, poor communication from the city manager has already caused at least one hangar tenant to unnecessarily leave the airport, costing the city almost $3,000 per year. As president of the Piper Aviation Museum, I see several thousand visitors each year come to our museum. This year, we have visitors from every state in the Union and every continent in the world except Antarctica. Many of these visitors fly to the museum, and a lot of these visitors purchase fuel. And we also direct a lot of those visitors downtown to the Lock Haven restaurants to spend money. And although I'm not a member of the Sentimental Journey organization and cannot speak directly for them, I do know that event brings hundreds and hundreds of visitors into Lock Haven. It seems to me that that event would be difficult to put on if fuel were not available in our airport. During that third week of June, Lock Haven hotels are full, and restaurants and stores in Lock Haven benefit from those visitors. Will you be the ones to tell those hotel owners this year many of their rooms will sit empty and they will suffer a loss of income? Last month, our volunteer group of Friends of the Airport suggested a meeting with the city manager and airport committee to work on ways to make the airport viable. We, along with the city airport committee members and the city manager, all agreed on a date and planned to meet on December 13th. A week later, the city manager canceled that meeting. So it seems obvious to me that he's uninterested in any help to improve things at the airport and is only interested in seeing the airport close. It's my understanding that the city was considering a solar farm on the fenced-in property on the south side of the airport. That solar farm would generate approximately $150,000 in revenue per year, but when the city manager learned that income, as per agreement between the city and the FAA, must stay with the airport, that project is no longer going forward. The net income from that solar farm would have been highly beneficial to the airport. Also, it is distressing to me that the city manager has been making condescending and hostile remarks towards members of our committee and the pilot committee in general to other city employees. I hope the city council will look closely into this budget and the motives behind it and make the necessary changes that will not destroy our airport. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from residents? Yes, sir.
My name is Niles Mazoris. I've been directly involved with the airport since 1972. I have my entire career has been involved in aviation, and I do have a degree in airport management. And in my opinion, I have never seen a time where the airport has been more mismanaged than the present time. I feel as if there's an intentional move to make the airport not viable so it can be discarded. One suggestion that I have for the council is when we had the budget meeting at the last city council meeting, there was 3 different sets of numbers presented. And there were thousands, in fact, hundreds of thousands of dollars difference between these figures. The figures that Mr. Marvin Cabbage presented, the figures that the bookkeeper of the airport had, directly firm figures, and the figures that were in the printed budget. In my opinion, the only way that the city council can make a fair opinion on that is to have good information. My suggestion is maybe we should have somebody audit these numbers so you have good information to make good decisions.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the input. Anyone else?
I'm speaking. I'm here, I'm Michelle Spelling, and I'm here to find out more information about our local city police and what's taking place with them. I see in the budget that they're cut and they're in different staff members. And I had a question about, other than the police department, which other departments will have smaller staff? Are we looking at numbers of people?
That is a personnel issue and would not be discussed in an open council meeting.
Okay.
All right?
Is that being looked at and has everything been approved?
Well, I'm not in charge of personnel, but I will do what I need to do to keep our city viable. If it's a choice between that or going into distressed city status,
yeah.
I mean, all kinds of people, including Mr. Marcinkevich, have all these great ideas, but where are their numbers coming from? Our numbers are coming from what we're spending. All right? So look, I appreciate everybody's input, but you know, if you're not sitting in the seat behind the book, looking at the numbers, then you're giving us a lot of fun information.
So
So
it
from
is
the,
being looked at carefully. Has it been approved, the final budget for the?
It has not.
For that part?
it has not.
section?
None of it
Correct.
has been approved.
But the key is for the people representing, council members like yourself representing, you will be looking at keeping our interest as citizens and keeping our community safe.
Keeping our community viable.
Okay,
I mean, what you consider safe and what I consider safe
safe might be two different things.
may not be quite the same.
And is it being examined as far as backup, if he's providing backup? Like if you have to resort to other outside agencies like the PSP or other agencies like that? Woodward Township. These are concerns, they're serious concerns.
The budget has 24/7 police coverage.
Okay.
Is that what your concern
Well,
is?
I'm interested in the 24/7 coverage, but I'm also interested in, are we going to have support? So if there's a crisis, people are able to report to that crisis. A police officer could come and intervene. Or if it's an EMT situation and someone is overdosed on drugs, they have to secure the scene before somebody can go in and administer life-saving techniques or all kinds of things like that. And my concern is,
We have
you're
mutual aid
relying,
agreements.
what?
We have mutual aid agreements with the surrounding, departments. So sometimes our officers respond to their area because they need help. So Woodward Township has responded in the city for things to help out if they were needed. The university police have responded if there was a need for more personnel on hand. So it's not specifically just the Lock Haven City Police, it's also state troopers. State troopers are in the city an awful lot.
We have the same number of police officers budgeted this year and next year.
And next year.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And it includes 24/7 police coverage like it does today.
24/7 coverage. Okay.
That's a memorandum of understanding that the chief of police announced last week at the budget meeting. So the memorandum of understanding provides for 24/7 police coverage using 12-hour shifts, 12-hour in the daytime, 12-hour in the nighttime. The schedule itself was worked out with the police officers themselves. They created the schedule. And they have agreed to implement that schedule. 12-hour shift does not mean 12-hour coverage. It's 24-hour coverage with 2 shifts a day. We have the same number of police officers right now that we had last year and that we will have next year.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just have one question. My name is Bob Larson. I've been on the airport since 1972, and I employ 13 full-time people, 3 part-time people, and the airport is necessary for our business. So I just have a question. At this point, is the budget not including fuel at the airport? Either jet fuel or low lead?
The draft of the original proposal to the council does not have fuel budgeted, but in the end, that's a draft. The more finalized version of the budgets come out next week. And so council did hear last week and this week from individuals about fuel. That doesn't mean the budget changes that night. That all gets worked on over the course of a couple weeks. When a budget is shown to council next week, because the airport fund currently its checking account is overdrawn $380,000 because it consistently spends more money than it brings in, then the taxpayer budget, the general fund, will have to show a transfer for the dollar amount value of the purchase of the fuel, because somebody has to cut that check. Like, we can't cut a check from a negative checking account. So the only checking account of the 2 that legally can be used for that purpose are taxpayer funds in the general fund. So when you purchase the airport fuel, It will have to be a transfer from the general fund into the airport fund to make that purchase. That profit that is then used to run the airport is not returned to the taxpayers. It's kept down at the airport so that the airport can pay its bills from that proceed. So that will appear in the final version of the budget, but it is important to know where that money comes from. You know, you have to have, I understand the premise that you can't sell fuel you don't own, but you also can't buy fuel with negative money. So somebody has to buy that fuel, and the people who have to buy that fuel, it will be shown in the general fund as a transfer.
Well,
there is fuel on hand now. It was just purchased a couple of months ago, I believe September or October, of the 100 low lead. So there is some fuel there for the first portion of the year. The jet fuel, the only purchase of jet fuel is really for the gypsy moth spraying. The city makes a profit on average the last 6 years of $100 a year off of jet fuel. So it's not something that we need to stock because we don't make revenue off of that. So we can have an agreement with the people who spray to more accurately order just the fuel that they need.
Right. I understand that. I just don't understand how airport that's been here as long as it is, and it generates other revenue for the city, can't somehow authorize or suggest that we form an authority and the city and the county fund that authority to run the airport and give it cover the liability of that over 5 years, and that would greatly cut the city's exposure. And the county has grant writers, they have resources just like the city does. And it's a real asset to the county. I mean, there's not many counties, populated counties in the country that don't have airports.
I would encourage you, Mr. Larson, to share those feelings with the county commissioners.
I have, and we're meeting with them.
The meeting that Mr. Dremel had said that was a meeting just between the Airport Advisory Committee and the pilots was a little misleading. That actually was a meeting that they proposed that we meet with the county commissioners on December 13th to pitch the idea of the county taking over the airport. But the city is not in a position to make that pitch right now. So that is why that was not moved forward. So I suggested that that be rearranged for the new year, not just immediately canceled and no further discussion. So that is something that we intend to speak to the county about, what assistance they may be able to provide for just the reasons you said. But it would be something when the new county commissioners are seated in the new year.
Would the council city council take into consideration sharing any liability of a shortfall at the airport if they feel it was managed correctly by an authority with the county?
Well, speaking on behalf of council, we haven't been presented with that yet, and I don't see why we wouldn't at least consider it. I mean, we want to hear, anyone can jump in, but we want to hear what the details are and how it would work. And yeah, I mean, I personally think that the airport is an asset to us in many ways, but it is a drain on our budget currently, and we need to figure out how we can fill that in. We're open to any ideas as far as how that can happen.
Well, at least I, as one individual and one company and say 15 people, feel like it should be a county and a city, I don't want to say problem, but burden to look into that we could solve it. And if we had an efficient authority with members that are not funded, members who are volunteer, who know aviation and been on other airports. I've been on 3 different airports with businesses in my life. They're all different, but you can't have an airport without fuel. You start losing hangar rent. People move out of the hangars. Now they're not paying for themselves anymore. And it's just a fact.
Yeah.
And there's got to be something that can be done with the acreage that's still developable at the airport. Shouldn't there be some type of revenue. We haven't looked into any of that. I'm not saying we haven't been able to get anybody to come in here.
We've not been successful at this point to developing any of that. There have been some talks about different things, but nothing has come to fruition yet.
The one aviation business that we had secured to come here was going to build a new hangar worth more than $2 million, but the FAA declined that.
Oh, because of the height situation, I think.
Nope, because of the taxiway.
The what?
Taxiway.
Well, just as a final note, when we bought Lockhaven Air Motorboat in 1986, we were told we had to furnish our own taxiway for access to the airport. We paid for that, and then about 10 years ago, we redid it. Lee Gilbert and Mike, two companies, split the cost. So we have paid some of our share through the Friends operations, as you would call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor.
I just wanted to point out that Mr. Wilson said my statement was misleading, and I didn't mean to be misleading. When it was my idea to have this meeting, we were invited by the city manager, our committee, to meet with the airport committee and the city manager. So we came up and met, and we were lectured that the city is losing $25,000 a month at the airport. I'm not sure where that number came from. And my statement, if you'll recall, is I'm an impatient man. I'd like to do this right away, but I realize that it may take a year to get this authority going. And I think that our committee and your committee should get together and find ways to keep this airport viable until hopefully an authority could be formed. And hopefully the county commissioners could be invited for their input also. We didn't need the county commissioners. We needed to talk with you people to figure out a way to make it viable. And when that meeting was canceled, it told me that you're not interested in making it viable. At least your city manager is not. I'm not meant to be misleading with the commissioners. We'd hoped to get them along, but they didn't need to come along at this point. We needed to figure out how to keep this airport going.
I think we've explored a lot of the possibilities with the multiple meetings that we have had and discussed a lot of those things. I'm not sure we have our homework together completely yet to go before the commissioners to make a good presentation.
I agree. So
So it's better, and this is a really, really busy time for all of us in the city with budget and everything else. There's not enough hours in the day. So I understand maybe after the beginning of the year, resurrecting it for sure, and I'm not putting this off. It's just, it's a timely thing. And you want to do it right the first time.
Nobody's busier than me.
Okay.
But my fear is you're going to run this airport to the ground particularly, and I hope you don't do it, that you vote not to buy fuel. That's the death knell of this airport. And I think if we can get the authority to take it over, figure out ways to make this work, I think it can be a very viable airport. But we have to work together, and that was my point. We need to do our homework to find ways. None of us are the ultimate expert. But it just seems to me that nobody wants the help that we offer.
Yes, sir. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
if you're gonna have a swimming pool, you have to have water. And we need gas. And if we're going to potentially transition and go to commissioners and make a potential plea for assistance in how we're gonna do this, we gotta keep fuel there. I mean, if you shut off the fuel source, then everything goes down from there, so. 100% agree.
Thank you. Any other public comment before we move on here? All right. 4B, use of Triangle Park, December 17th.
Covenant United Methodist Church is requesting the use of Triangle Park on Sunday, December 17th at 4 p.m. for an outdoor Christmas service. They did do this last year, and I will work with them to make sure they have everything they need.
Do you have a motion?
So,
Have a motion here
second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker. Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Anything else under that heading, public comments?
I had nothing, Your Honor.
Okay, 5, unfinished business, 5A, consideration of ordinance number 2023-12, fire code.
This is the amendment to Chapter 59 Fire Department of the City of Lock Haven City Code. As relayed to council Wednesday, November 27th, I met with the Fire Advisory Board majority members, including Bill Bailey from Citizens, Lou Summers from Hopos, Jake Neff and Bob Neff from Hand in Hand, and Chief Tyler Wooding representing the city. Also in attendance was Mayor Long. What is put before you this evening is the recommendation from the Fire Advisory Board. And obviously there are some objections by one of the three companies on the proposed amendments, and those have been provided to you in writing and this evening invoiced.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple places under that ordinance that I guess is the fire should be in the print. Should we say fire chief / administrator or and administrator? So I guess it's a functional issue, like on 59-2. And a couple other places it says that. So it sounds like it's two separate people. It actually could be, I guess.
Well, it has
In the
been
budget.
at times, right?
But
Has been at times, right?
Yes. So it could be.
It just happened to be the chief was also the administrator, as is now, but it could be separate someday. There's two separate line items in the budget. It's one for the driver, one for the chief and a stipend, and then one for the administrator is a separate stipend. Should that be the same stipend, or should it stay separated? And that's the other thing. These other guys that mentioned about not being able to move up, they have no chance to advance to get the extra stipends as administrator or as chief at the higher pay rate. They have to stay. There's one set rate. That's it. Anyway, I was asking about the / part. Let me move on. That's a couple different places, but back on the Article 2, I guess that's where you said it changed. Under Article 2C, the city fire chief shall visit the two companies of the fire department to see that the apparatus buildings or property in possession of the two companies are in proper condition. Is he just inspecting the city-owned equipment, or is he inspecting all the equipment?
Currently, and since 1972, he's been inspecting the city equipment.
Okay, should that say city-owned? Because it later on in the proposed ordinance, it mentions city-owned this, and city-owned that.
Well,
So should it say
the only other
also-
place it says city-owned was at the suggestion of Citizens, which was included by the advisory board.
Yeah, I saw it.
For the use of apparatus in 5916.
And also the fire chief should, in E, fire chief should have control of and responsible for dispatching equipment of any company to any incident outside the city. Should that also say city-owned equipment? I mean, you can't tell me where to take the car to get serviced or what to do with it. I mean, why should we tell them something that they personally own, company owns, not the city?
Well, that's not dispatching.
Said the fire chief was, they have control of it, of any company.
Control of and be
Equipment of any
responsible for the dispatching of.
Equipment of any company. So that includes any equipment that they have. That's how I read it. I just, there has to be a separation of church and state here somewhere. So there's some refinement they have here. And also the G, I never known there to be a book furnished by the city as a record of fires. I thought they used an incident reporting system when it was all computerized and they sent it in. Those are the monthly reports that you see. Is that right, Tyler?
Yes, now it's all computerized.
Now it's all computerized, so do we need a book provided by the city for you to write in every incident or a record of fires?
That's actually part of state code. You just need to maintain a record.
Okay. Because it says book, so that threw me off. So if we're changing the verbiage in an ordinance, if it just says a reporting system or something like that, I think it's verbiage. I'm not against the content of it. It's just the verbiage. And under general regulations, under Article 3, also city owned. No alcohol shall be allowed in any station belonging to the fire department or used by anyone. That's okay when they're on duty not to use it, that's fine, but city owned should say city owned station. They have events in the citizens that sometimes,
Not under this ordinance, they did
Not
never
under
have
this ordinance.
alcohol.
yeah, not under this.
Or are you saying they do?
Well, no, I'm saying that.
I mean, you're a
should we
member
tell-
there.
Yeah, and should we tell them that they can't do something in their own building?
Well, you have since 1972.
Well, I'm saying, should we be saying that to them? Again, church and state, there, how can we tell them some of them that we don't own? But I was just pointing out places that I think should be generic, more so, or should say city owned. If this is a city ordinance, it should be pertaining to the apparatus, equipment, and buildings that the city owns.
Boss? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my question is why the switch to 6 years instead of doing the 2-2-2? What was the thought process behind that? And then number 2, can the chief go for 12 years? And then
Chiefs, I mean, currently chiefs are reappointed. Norm Wolfram has been, as far as moving up,
Right.
Norm Wolfram's been the chief of citizens since I came here in 2014 and for many, many years before that.
Should we look?
Tyler Wooding has been chief, Bob Neff has been chief. Nobody moves up like that. It's the same people every 3 years. Or every 2 years. So what this does is take the recommendation of the Fire Advisory Board majority, which was the term be 6 years, so that if someone were a new chief, they would have 6 years to get the experience of being the chief before they would have to face potentially being replaced. So it does give that chief more longevity, because currently they would get, under the current system, 2, 2, and 2, they get 6 years. So this just cements in that it is still 6 years. They just aren't going from assistant and deputy roles because they're staying permanently as the district chief and for that 6 years. At the end of that 6 years, that company would determine whether or not they want to re-elect that person for another 6 years. And they could do that like they've done with Norm and Tyler and Bob. Every time the term is up, just re-elect them over and over again.
But they're not re-electing, you're appointing, right?
No,
They have to apply.
no, they're electing their district chiefs.
The chief applies to you, correct? If I wanted to be chief, I would apply to you.
I don't think we're talking about the same thing. The district chief, there's a district chief and
I'm talking
citizens.
the fire chief.
The main fire
Right,
chief,
6 years.
that is the city department head.
Right,
So that term is 6 years,
that's what I'm
But that
talking
had
about.
always been rotated between the 3
Right.
2 years.
but they
and 2
weren't
years.
department heads. Like they weren't the administrative department head, which is what this creates that person to be, the permanent department head as the fire chief.
For 6 years.
Right.
But prior is 2-2-2, they just rotated.
No,
But Bob, for instance, was the administrator
Okay.
for a long time. It's been a long time he's been the administrator. He was the chief occasionally, every 6 years, every 4 years. He would become the chief, he'd be.
And that's
chief
why we
of-
were separate.
Right, but those are separate positions, don't confuse the
Right.
two. So yes, the company will have essentially a chief, and the other company will have a chief or supervisor, whatever they call them, and we will have an administrator still who is permanent as long as the city council agrees he's permanent. So that's the difference. I think we need to make clear that this isn't the rotating of the chief for the 3 companies, or in this case 2. This is a rotating, this is a chief administrator.
Right.
which is the question that Steve was trying to raise.
Should we put term limits on it? So we don't have somebody that's in there 24 years.
Well, I would challenge you that we have term limits on it as city council, just like we have term limits already at the polling place.
Because I've heard in the past that maybe we should have had term limits in the past, instead of having somebody in there multiple years.
And
That's
Fire administrator?
as our, yeah,
and that's our job.
yeah.
That's our job, though,
But we've
not the
always,
community's job.
correct, but we've always taken the advisory boards committee, am I right, recommendations. So,
Sorry to interrupt. The administrator is the city manager's,
right,
not council's decision. So that person is a full-time employee department head. And under the optional charter law, which is what this matches, that is the permission of the
Understood.
city manager.
Let me clarify something for me, because I sat in the meeting, but this basically takes what was 2 positions and every once in a while was 1. It makes it 1 all the time, if I'm reading this the way. That's the difference.
correct.
Okay, they were 2 separate things, and every once in a while, just because of the way the rotation worked, it was the same. And the administrator was always that way. This is changing that so that the chief is that way as well. And that's the question, do we want to see that or change?
Right, and that's what I believe Citizens is saying,
Yes,
because they can be 3-2 for the next 24 years. They could be out of the majority for the next 24 years, and I think that's their concern. Am I right with that?
Correct, yes.
And I think that they bring up, hey, why don't we put it as 7 council, or 7 on it, 2 on the council, to help balance that out. I think that's a legitimate concern, because I could see how you get a person in there, and I'm not saying they're good, bad, or ugly, but 3-2 can be 3-2, and I don't know how this was voted. It could have been 3-2. It could have been 4-1. I know it wasn't majority, or I know it was majority, but if it was 3-2, this could be 3-2 for 50 years. That's my concern with what you have to say there.
But if that is consistently happening, then the chief is to represent the city, not a company. It has always been that way. So to say that you know for a fact that isn't going to happen, that the chief can't be independent of their company, means that you have to be able to show examples where consistently every time whoever was the chief favored their particular company, which I don't think is true. I don't think Norm did that. That if Norm was chief, that he always was favoring Citizens. I don't believe that that's accurate. If the Fire Advisory Board believes that the chief, who is representing the city's interests, is consistently not making decisions that they believe are in the best interest of the city, they have every right to come to the city manager and voice that concern. Because that person is the city department head, and that's who you would come and make that concern known to, would be me. Well, the city manager doesn't always have to be me. One day probably won't be, so, but hopefully that would outlive, the ordinance outlives me. So.
see, there's an issue I see here with it, and I know what you're saying, but we are a hybrid. We rely on volunteers. Can't afford to pay a fire company. Can't afford to pay all paid members. And if members feel disenfranchised, then they don't be members anymore. And the way it was set up before made them feel as though they had some say in things. And so changing it to where they feel like they don't, I get concerned that could hurt volunteerism and people being involved. And we can't afford to go to a full paid fire department.
I did provide a list of fire department structures from other third-class cities in council's packet. And you will notice that the combination department paid fire chief non-rotating is the most frequent for the combination department. Full career department is also listed, and full volunteer department is also listed.
Thoughts, anything?
Yeah, those of you who were at the meeting with the fire department. So there were, I apologize because I didn't write it down. I wrote other things down, but not that. Who were present at the advisory board meeting?
Most recent one?
Yes, the one that did the vote.
Lou Summers from Hopes, Jake Neff and Bob Neff from Hand in Hand, Bill Bailey from Citizens, and Chief Tyler Wooding was there representing the city.
And how many do reps did, on the advisory committee, do each department have? My understanding is 3. Was that correct or not?
They have, let me see.
Original, in the current, before the merger.
2 each.
2.
2 each.
So
Okay.
Langillen from Hope Hose and Joseph Sanders from Citizens were not able to attend.
So even that, I mean, look, they may have legitimate reasons, but that was an important meeting, and for people not to be present bothers me a little. I understand volunteerism is a tough business anyway. I've been in enough organizations to know that, but that was a pretty important meeting. I'm disappointed that the other 2 were not there. Nonetheless.
Mr. Conklin, I do work.
Okay, I'm saying, I understand that there are things that keep people, but my concern is that this comes to us approved by the advisory committee, and we in the city, on city council, want to pick it apart. We should do that with every single committee report that comes to us, I guess. I don't understand. If it was before the advisory committee approved it, I don't
But if we're gonna
understand.
sit and rubber stamp everything that comes through us, then why are we sitting here? I mean, I'm giving an opinion, and council can agree or disagree with that opinion. Councilman Brinker is giving his opinion. We're not here just to rubber stamp everything that comes in front of us, or else we shouldn't be here.
But why did we send it to the advisory committee?
We wanted their opinion, but it doesn't mean we follow,
Exactly.
it doesn't mean we necessarily follow it if we disagree with it.
But they're the professionals. This is their ordinance.
And that's fine.
This is their organization. They're the people that know about firefighting. I mean, I respectfully submit that all of us have background thoughts on firefighting, but these are the people who do this. The Fire Advisory Committee are the people who do this. They're the people who reviewed this, and they're the people who voted to approve it. We're picking it apart. I mean, they brought something to us and said, yes, we approved it. However, now we want to talk about this. And I think that the place to have talked about this was at their Fire Advisory Board. I mean, I agree with Councilmember Conklin. I respect and appreciate what they do. And I think that it sounds like maybe there's some issues that didn't get to be discussed as thoroughly as maybe they wanted to at their advisory committee. That's my.
I was just answering his statement.
I agree, Joel, and I respect that. It's just that I think that they're the folks that review this and approve this and bring it, they approved it and send it back to us. I guess I'm questioning if it wasn't agreeable to them, perhaps that's where it needs to go back to, if there's an issue with it.
Mayor,
Yes,
I would suggest that it go back to the committee. We have 2 more budget meetings. We have 2 more meetings to vote on this. There's issues. It should go back to that committee. You should hammer them out, and you should come to council with, this is our final version. We've worked through everything. We've argued. We've added. We've subtracted. This is it. That's the work that should be done. That's my opinion. If it's voted on tonight, I'm voting no.
I am also.
There's too many questions.
I'm not sure I'm entirely up to speed on the issue, but it seems to me that when you move from 3 companies to 2 companies, you cannot rotate the chief. You can either alternate it, or you can pick one. And if people don't like the idea of picking one, then maybe Councillor Barney's right.
I think that's what they were suggesting was it's a matter of semantics, whether it's rotating or alternating, but they were still looking to.
Well, yeah, I think it's a difference. When you're rotating, you have a choice of grid. I think Councillor Barney's right. We need to put this back and make sure that the people who have to live with this ordinance are 100% behind it before we vote on it.
Make it a time so everybody can make it. 'Cause I get it, I work. It can't be at 1 o'clock.
Well, this, you can come if you're around. I went to the last one so that I could try to educate myself a little bit.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we're not prepared to vote on this apparently.
You probably should do a motion to send it to return
Do I
it to
have that
them.
motion, Mr. Byers, that you brought up?
I would make that motion.
A motion and a second. I don't think we need to beat to death anymore. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
No.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Okay. 5B, notice of award of the additional CDBG CV funding.
The city planner, upon realizing that costs for the new skate park would exceed the amount of the original award for the CDBG CV, made an amendment to the original application requesting an additional $121,190, which was awarded. And so, again, that is 100% funded from CDBG CV. Great thanks to the city planner for.
Very much, thank you. Any other unfinished
Does
business?
she have to take any private work?
No time.
Any other unfinished business?
I had none, Your Honor.
New business. 6A, consideration of acceptance of the resignation of relief driver Brian Brungard.
I received an email from Brian Brungard, who's currently a relief driver at Citizens Hose, that his last day in that position will be December 11th, 2023. So I would just request that council accept his resignation with gratitude for service.
Question. Will he stay on as an auxiliary driver?
That would be a decision for the
I didn't know if they
fire
dealt with
board.
that yet, because then we could deal with it here on accept his resignation.
I've received no letter from the
Nothing from.
advisory board.
Do I have a motion to accept the resignation?
So moved. Thanks.
Motion, and Richard, do a second? Motion and a second. Yeah, please thank him for his time and everything he's done for us. And our regrets that he's not still doing it. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. 6B, notice of the pilot payment.
This is this year's notification that the city will receive and has received $27,006.79 from the Clinton County Housing Authority, which is calculated under the state's law. It's more than last year, which was $23,500.
Thank you very much. 6C, notice of receipt of local share of state police fines.
The city of Lock Haven, with a full-time police department, receives a share of state police fines issued in the city of Lock Haven limits. The second payment this year will be for $1,658.67. That's included in council's packet so that it appears in the minutes.
6D, notice of 2021 judicial sale properties in the city.
The city received notification from Koploff, Ryan, and Hauser, the solicitor for Clinton County, that the 2021 tax year judicial sale properties list includes properties within the city limits, and those have been provided to council for your information.
Any other new business?
I had none.
All right, public hearing on the 2024 proposed budget. Purpose of the hearing is to afford the public an opportunity to comment and make observations on the recommended budget as reflected in ordinances number 2023-13 and 2023-14. As was stated earlier, this is not a done deal. We're still going through everything, and certainly, can someone press the button so you can get out? There you go. We can certainly still make changes, and we do want your input. We appreciate your input. Thank you. Comments from the agencies and organizations in the city. Fire department.
First up this evening is a topic that we just don't seem to have talked about enough tonight, the fire department. And Chief Tyler Wooding is here to talk about the accomplishments this year and some goals for next year that this city's resources will help to fund.
Okay, so in 2023, 80% of structure fires within the city were held to and extinguished within the room of origin. Remaining 20% may have extended beyond the room of origin, but never extended to adjacent or exposure properties. Also in 2023, we conducted 42 outreach programs directed at preventing fires and other life safety issues within the city. These programs include general fire safety, occupational fire safety training, voluntary life safety inspections, and pre-incident planning of high-value, high-threat properties. One more thing for 2023, through an Assistance to Firefighters grant from FEMA, the fire department was able to purchase 46 new self-contained breathing apparatus units that total approximately $370,000. The city was responsible for 5% buy-in and grant writer fees, but this grant saved city taxpayers approximately $350,000. Some objectives for 2024. Everyone knows about the reduction in services from Lock Haven Hospital. Many patients are then being transferred to Center and Lycoming counties. That has led to a great strain on resources, EMS resources here in Lock Haven. Some city residents are waiting 20 to 30 minutes for transport to a hospital. I've been in discussions with Chief Banfield of Lock Haven EMS, and we're trying to come up with a partnership program, get more ambulances out and reduce those times by at least half. In 2024, we hope to increase the number of community outreach programs by 10%, particularly in the many elderly housing complexes within the city. In 2025, the Clinton County 911 Center plans to move to a P25 compliant radio system. Fire department has already started to upgrade some of our radio systems using state and local grants. The total projected cost of that is $250,000 for the Lock Haven Fire Department. We hope to coordinate a regional grant with other emergency services here in Clinton County as a way of making our application more appealing to federal grant reviewers and increasing our chance of award. And finally, as always, we will continue to explore ways to recruit and retain volunteers. The startup of emergency services program at the middle school and high school has increased interest in our junior firefighter program. Our goal is to at least maintain the same number of junior firefighters coming into the program as others age out. So far, we have 2 that will be aging out this year, and we have 2 in the application process. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Questions? Okay. UCC code enforcement and property maintenance. Oh, sorry.
When we put under 001-411, which is fire safety, public safety, the insurance auto, is that the fire equipment? I mean, we don't have autos, or should it? That's just a standard category for every department. It says auto, that
Right.
has an auto. Okay, and what about contracted services further on down, 4,500, 400? That's a pretty big increase from, well, not from what was budgeted, but what was from actually spent.
Most is Glick.
Like,
Which is the company we use for repairs to the fire trucks.
contracted services, that's different than vehicle maintenance or repairs.
Yes. One is what we do in-house, and the contracted services is what we do with Glick.
I had the same question as mine were both highlighted, because that's a big jump.
Well,
For the-
and what
for
was
the-
actually
for the auto.
They budgeted, yeah.
I mean, this year is 614 to 17.8. That's $17,000 jump. I'm just curious, what was the difference?
Well, the worksheet that I provided before shows the distribution of all of the different insurances that we pay, like liability, things like that. We did get an appraisal in 2023, which updated the cost of several items, including the replacement value of several items, including vehicles. And there also was an increase in the auto insurance rate. We do get a discount from Penn Prime because we're a dual trust member. So we're a member of both the workers' comp trust and the liability. So some of those discounts you will see reflected in the budget, but the discount may not have been given to the general fund. It may have been given to the water fund or the airport fund instead.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, UCC code enforcement and property maintenance.
We had a busy year this year. We had, at the end of last year, we had 100% compliance for the first ward for rental inspections. We had continued work this year with a trailer park that is on 3rd Avenue that we had had issues with for several years. We've spent the last 2 or 3 years working with a new owner, and we've managed to remove 9 blighted trailers that have been replaced by 7 new manufactured homes, all on permanent foundations. Repaved the owner repaved the entryways, improved some infrastructure. We're down to 2 or 3 trailers that need to be replaced there, and they're moving toward 100% removal and replacement. We have a pending sales agreement that we have worked with the redevelopment authority for the sale of the property at 37 to 55 Belmont Avenue. I just got word about 10 minutes ago, which the city manager would have gotten also, but I'm sure he doesn't have time to check his email. We will be closing on that property on Wednesday, as long as we can get the redevelopment authority chairman available for the closing. We have established relationships with 2 new realtors that out of the Williamsport area that are working on 2 vacant structures that the city has been working with other developers for over the years. We're hopeful that we can have these 2 properties sold, rehabilitated, and be operational again. We have finally, it's been budgeted for the past, I believe, 3 budgets for the hiring of a property maintenance enforcement officer. We have done that. He's kind of doing double, triple, quadruple duty at the time. But our property maintenance enforcement officer is Caleb Rogers, who also serves as the facilities manager for all the buildings the city owns. And he's still serving as the instrumentation tech for the sewer department. So he's a busy guy. Caleb obtained his property maintenance certification in August. He's been through Pennsylvania Construction Code Academy training. He started in my office on the 6th of November.
We've been kind of getting our feet wet with the implementation of the property maintenance ordinance. He's been canvassing the city and picking out what I would call relatively simple fixes for non-compliance. First thing that he did, Tyler, you'll be happy, he was identifying places that didn't have the proper identification on houses, sent letters of non-compliance. So far, we've had probably 90% compliance for those. We even had an email from a property owner who received a letter of non-compliance thanking us for sending him that because it was the catalyst that he needed for his contractor to start work he had been trying to get him to do for quite some time. So in the new year, we are hoping to have the actual implementation of the full property maintenance code, which takes off of the police department's hands the enforcement of grass and high weeds, snow, sidewalk maintenance, and nuisance vehicles. We are hoping to have a comprehensive review of the zoning ordinance to create a more friendly, user-friendly document that has different overlays in the city that would pertain to things like the university. And we're hoping to integrate the rental inspection program results into an electronic database, which we've been trying to do with all of the property files for the past 3 years. With the city's tight budget, we don't have actual software that does that, so it's just been my staff that has been trying to integrate that all into an electronic database so it could be accessed from anywhere, anytime. That would make it a lot easier to disseminate rental inspection certificates or registration certificates, things of that nature.
Anything else? Anybody have any questions? Thank you, Don, appreciate it. Department of Public Works. It's like the next couple of things are yours.
Yes. So this year administration, we were able to adapt a lot of ordinances. I worked with you guys and Greg come up with the changes in those. Next year, I plan to do the same, so you'll be hearing from me again. This year, I also drafted the Public Works Operation Safety Manual. So that includes all operations of each department and then safety issues like trenching, traffic control. I have that out to all supervisors for review. Then next year, I hope to get in front of you before the middle of the year, just to give you an idea of what our operations are, the safety that we have to deal with. So this year, we were excited for the stormwater fee fund. Fortunately, that didn't go through, but we started making inventory for future projects. Next year, we're still going to identify all those problem issues or problem areas. This year, Sunset Pines Phase 1 and 2 were complete. Next year, I'm going to be working with them here. I'm actually working with them right now to go over the next phase. So we're seeing what we can do with the current liquid fuels amount. This says Old Reservoir Spillway completion. Hopefully by the end of the month. I actually have a meeting with them tomorrow to go over that. And then next year, just continue working with the city engineer on future water projects.
Questions for the Public Works Director on any of that?
Okay, all right. Public Property Department. We were able to relocate and install new signs according to the WPCD standards. Mostly it was done in the Hill District. We'll continue that for next year. And then we're looking at the First Ward area to release some of those signs. We trimmed trees that block city signs. Mostly they're found by Devin and his sewer truck or the street sweeper, so we'll continue to cut them as we have before. This year we removed 2,000 feet of vegetation along the Baldywood Creek. I think it was in 2019, and it could have been the capital, could have been budget. I proposed a 5-year plan to have all the vegetation removed, and it looks like next year we'll be a year ahead of that. So that'll be nice. We should have all of Baldywood Creek completely clean. The relief wells were tested this year and passed by the U.S. Army Corps, and then Devin right now is currently working on the conduit inspections, and we'll have that complete here
next month or so. And then through the city parks, we have to go through, we always look at the trees, especially in the spring, make sure that there's no, we call them dead limbs, and hazard trees, so we don't want them, falling down on playgrounds or anything. And, we'll continue that for next year. All right, so streets. We, same as before, we identified the outdated storm sewer infrastructure, created an inventory. We plan to keep doing that next year and years after. Did routine maintenance, stormwater infrastructure, utilizing Devin's crew, the jet truck. We would clean out the storm pipes, inlets, get those mostly clean. There's a lot there that we still have to do. So next year we're going to continue cleaning those. We did the line painting and striping this year throughout town, and we're still investigating how to get longer lasting paint and getting thermoplastic put down. Glen Road, a couple of years ago, there was a rock line ditch put in from the police station all the way to Irwin Street. We received a lot of complaints over the last couple of years, so this year with the PennDOT Jody program, we worked with PennDOT and had that rock ditch cleaned out, put a swale in. Then next year we plan on removing the rest. Then just did an inventory of streetlights, make sure everything's up to par. And we'll continue inspecting, making sure that the globes are replaced, and everything's working. That's it. And that should be it for sewer.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Did you anticipate in the drop in the electric services that it could reflect in the budget, that we don't pay as much for the streetlights? Or is that a contracted flat fee? Because everybody else's rates went down a little bit.
It's a
December 1st.
We have a flat fee we pay to Constellation, so we know exactly what we pay today and what we will pay next year. So all of the electric fees show what the flat rate is for next year.
Because it jumped up.
Yes, we're going from 3 to 7.
It went from 121,000 to 95. But actually didn't jump up, it went down. Okay. Just wondering if I took that into account. No, everything else looks.
Oh, just quick. We did a really nice job with the new trees on West Main there last year. Am I right that we were going to grind the stumps up? Like the ones of the trees that we cut down on people's property that wanted the trees removed?
We plan on removing them, yeah. We just.
Okay, I was just wondering. I saw, what made me think of it was the shade tree supplies and the park maintenance, and that made me think about it, because I know we still have them. We haven't ground anything up yet. I don't know if we have that earmarked coming up next year.
Well, you'll see in the capital projects or the capital purchases next year. Stop right now.
Good luck with that.
Only the driver, nobody.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the public works director? Okay, thank you.
Dave Sorgan, Chief Operator at the wastewater treatment facility. We're still having the settling problems. The industrial inspection program has been rewritten and finished. We rewrote industrial waste permits to comply with EPA's audit from last year. They went into effect October 1st. The new permits did. Something I would like to add to the next set of permits is COD upper limits. We have no upper limits for chemical oxygen demand. It comes to us at a very high loading from the industries.
So what would you do with that? If they go above that, a limit that you set, then they pay more? We charge them
Or
more
they just
for going.
they get an NOV if they go above the upper limit.
Yeah.
That's a violation.
We have, to some degree, a surcharge, but then there is a cap. So once you exceed the cap, you get a notice of violation and a fine for that, which is required by EPA for the items that we regulate.
October, we had a very high loading from one of the industries, 35,000 pounds of COD come from one of the industries. They also had a nice upset. That was where the smell came from there in the middle of October. They paid a good surcharge for it, but there was no NOVs or anything. That's good. The laboratory accreditation, it's not gonna pay for itself. There's a lot of work that involved in that, new equipment.
We had asked Dave and Tony to look into that with the engineers about having our lab at the wastewater treatment plant DEP accredited. The old plant was. So in order to accomplish that would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that is an exceptional amount of money over what we actually pay for the testing that we send out. So it also would increase then our internal supplies because we'd have to buy all the stuff to test. So that just doesn't look cost effective right now to do that. In your budget, as a reminder, 428 is the administration department for wastewater, and 429 is the wastewater treatment expenses. 428 is covered solely by city user fees. Treatment, the city is reimbursed percent to total of flow by each of the partnering municipalities or authorities that send their wastewater to us for treatment. And so generally our reimbursement from the partners is a year after. So right now we sent the bills out today to get the final reimbursement for what the city paid to treat their sewer in 2022. And we will send out in February the first of 4 bills to get reimbursement for the city's costs in treating the other municipalities' sewer in 2023. So we're always well over a year behind in getting reimbursed for the expenses. That's one of the reasons that Dave and Caleb and the city engineers have been working with Saltzman Hughes, with Lee Stinnett on updating the municipal sewer agreements as well as the Clinton County Sewer Authority agreement, and encompassing that all into one agreement for everyone to sign. So a draft of that was just received, and then we have a meeting next week with the attorney to go over any notes we may have, and then we'll be meeting at the attorney's suggestion one-on-one with each of the municipal entities to go over the changes in that.
Are you trying to cut that quarterly then, instead of waiting for the whole year? I mean, shorter period of time than a year.
Yes, we're trying to speed up the reimbursement.
Questions?
459 is the department that's collection, and that is also city only. That's paid for by city user fees, and Devin Bechtel is here this evening.
Good morning, I'm Devin with the City of Luckhaven Sewer Department. Some of the accomplishments we did for 2023, we updated our ordinances for the laterals, how they're placed, and for in-homes itself. Just to check that the lines aren't doing I&I to drop treatment costs for days. Another thing we did was create an inspection program, which is flushing main lines and televising them, showing us where the issues are, what we need to set up for replacements. We also cleaned out the old collections building. There's a lot of items there that we don't use anymore. We got rid of those. We met with restaurants to do inspections of grease traps and for them to put them in. It's a new ordinance that we have been putting up. 2024 goals is to continue working with the realtors and the plumbers on updated ordinances. That's starting for like sales of homes. Now laterals were put in as well. Continue the flushing and televising and providing the GIS department the updated videos for maps. And to continue assessing lines for replacement.
Nothing there? Anyone?
So overall, the sewer fund will still end with a deficiency this year. And so I have put in as just a placeholder recommendation, a 15% increase in sewer charges. My actual recommendation is, unless council as a whole objects, I'll get a cost from Raftellus, who did the water rate study, for a sewer rate study. And then once you get that back, you can make a determination on the appropriate increase for sewer. Unlike water, you do not have to go to the Public Utility Commission, so you can change the rate with just the same ordinance adoption method that you would do for any other ordinance. So I will ask for that quote from Raftellus and come back to you with that, unless there's outright majority objection.
Yeah. Will that be before we finish the budget, or
No.
can that be afterwards?
It can be afterwards.
Okay.
Anything else? Of the sewer fund? And then administration and everything. Okay, comments from residents in attendance. Heard some comments already this evening. Yes, sir.
I have one comment before I leave on another subject. First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak. But my next comment is Piper Aviation Museum is having an open house / Christmas party on the Wednesday, December 20th. Hopefully you've already received invitations. If not, I want to issue a personal invitation to all 9 of you. Please come down and see what we're doing there. We've done a lot of great things in the last 2 years. We've got some great plans going ahead. I'd really like to see you down at the museum. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you came today, Norm did something earlier, whether.
Yeah, he did. Did we kind of address that during our talk, or do you want to say something, Norm?
Yes, maybe I was here to reiterate the recommendations from the advisory board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norm. Appreciate it. Thanks for reminding us. No other comments from residents, questions? Okay. Comments from members of council?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
Brian Brugard texted me while we were in our meeting, and he gave me permission to read this. Gentlemen, just to clarify, yes, I plan on staying on as auxiliary driver. Plan on helping cover shifts led by my vacancy at the present time, working 28 hours. Every other weekend does not allow for my personal or much personal time to spend with my kids, or things needed taken care of at my home. It's need time to do that, but allow me to still help out covering open shifts for the city and its citizens.
Put that on the next agenda. Is that what we have to do?
We have to wait for the fire advisory board to give a recommendation to you under the current ordinance.
And secondly, I had a really nice time of attending the open house for the Pregnancy Resource Center near Montpelier today. They did a really good job of renovating it. Looking forward to some really good things from the center here in our community.
Anybody else?
Good fudge.
Okay, we got the FYI reports there for everybody to take a look at. Does anybody have anything else to bring before council this evening?
Just want to announce that the December 11th regular meeting of council, charitable organizations that traditionally council makes donations to with city tax dollars have been invited to either attend in person and or submit documentation of requests that they may have. And on December 18th, the regular meeting of city council is scheduled, which will have the adoption of the final budget.
Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn? To adjourn. Thank you very much.